telling you to sit down, that may be a sign of something. I know quite well because I have it. My son had it. He was cooking for us. Oh, he was not a very good cook. He was horrible, but then he went through cooking school and now he's passable. Maybe. But he was doing the 4-hour dinner. Anyone ever been to one of those? 4-hour Italian dinner with all the 7-course thing. And every meal was on the table and hot and done on schedule and all the other stuff. But there was one small problem. He was there demonstrating a bottle of wine, a special way you have to hold it and all this stuff. And he had the towel over his arm and a nice little jacket. And we noticed a fire in the kitchen. He had left the hot pad on the stovetop, the flat stovetop, and it just was on fire. And we says, Jim, and so he goes in there, you know what he does? He takes he's yelling at someone we can't see, and then he takes his little jacket off and his towel, and he puts on his chef hat, and he turns around and is yelling at someone that we still can't see. And he had this argument back and forth for quite a while between these two people. So see, Teddy, you're not the only one. Anyways. So the topic today is the true nature of God. And really, instead of trying to give a definitive answer for this, I'm just going to give both sides of the topic and let you decide for yourself. That's the only safe thing to do here. In fact, that's the unity way, really. Because we're not trying to say exactly what's going on. So, but this topic to me presents a paradox. Why? Because truth, at its very best, is ambiguous. How can we understand? It's like an ant crawling up the trunk of an elephant. You can't really understand. We are the ants, and our understanding is and always will be incomplete. So, let's say that you have made up your mind what the true nature of God is, and it's based on experience with him, her, it, and that's to be expected. This happens. But then what would happen if you suddenly had a new experience with God, one that contradicts everything you thought you knew about God in every possible way? What then? It's like an ant wandering off the trunk onto the elephant's ear. What now? So let us proceed with caution. When I was young, I was taught to believe in a loving Heavenly Father, one that lived in heaven, and I was told this, and also he lived with us as his heavenly family. There was a Jesus there, who was our elder brother. There was also a Heavenly Mother who was mysterious and about which I was not ever told much. When I was a teenager, I decided, above everything else, I wanted to talk to this Heavenly Father. Just as we are talking here. Well, not quite. I wanted a two-way conversation. Not just me talking and someone else laughing. That wouldn't be very good. You ask God a serious question and you get laughter back, But that's happened. Anyways, so I set out to achieve this by praying often for hours, and eventually I opened up what I now call my inner voice. So I still hear, after everything crazy in my life is going on, I still hear this voice. So you're not alone. And for instance, it tells me what songs to pick for our Sunday service. Kind of interesting. I says, this is the perfect song, and I hear a little suggestion. Maybe, keep on looking, and then I hit the right one, and I go, oh yeah, that's what I need to bring today. So what happened was, a door had opened, just a crack between my consciousness and the astral planes. To me, this is prayer. This relationship I've had with this voice is filled with bliss. Let's call it heavenly love. So, at some point, I began to wonder who this voice really was. I've given you the version where God is a person like you and I, with whom we can talk. But Paul Hasselbeck and Emily Cady taught differently. They said the voice is invented by our mind, so we can converse with something far too great to possess a voice. Like the wind or sky is too large, but much bigger in every way. Charles Fillmore said, God only does what man says he shall do. God is our servant. We are all free to use God as we are free to use the principles of mathematics or music. The principle never interferes. What Charles Fillmore is saying, essentially, is that God is neutral. Like a mathematician working out problems on his slate, not caring what the numbers did to the world, not responsible for that. Well, then who is responsible? Who? Maybe we are, all of us. Maybe we are the ones giving God the numbers, and he is only solving our equations. There's a whole group of people that think this way, by the way. So, which is it? Do our prayers communicate with beings of light from the astral worlds, or with the vastness of the underlying energy filling all of creation? Or both? I'm reading this talk to my wife, and she says, well, really what you're saying is, it looks like I'm having a personal relationship with an abstract idea. Okay, that really sums it up. Mm-hmm. But what really is going on? So really what this talk is to do is to get you thinking and think about what your conclusions have been, and maybe think about some of the other possibilities. Here's a dialogue. Mary was proud of herself. This thought was a good one, but she knew it wasn't her brain doing this. There was another brain which had taken over and was doing the thinking for her. Is this other brain God? She mused. Does the energy field that I felt so acutely last night have thinking power? I should say no, but then where did this understanding come from if the source had not the power to think? God? Asked Mary, the one with no name. Can you talk to me? Obviously. Welcome home, child. Mary asked, if you are the energy I feel, if you are life, and that is a very big something reaching into every corner of existence, then how, really, how can you be talking to me? You are providing the voice. What? No, cancel that question. I understand. You really do have no name. Mary felt God's smile wash over her. My imagination is acting the part of God that I want to be there. But God is a real presence that fills all that is. Not the voice. I put the voice there. The bridge is touch. I touch life, and my imagination interprets the returning touch into thoughts that helps me understand. Mary sat in awe of what she had just come up with. What's happening to me? And here's the little voice again. Something wonderful, do not resist, said the voice. That was her way of hearing a God who had no voice. So, is God a physical immortal? Or is God the force behind all creation? And I'll just make a comment about these two ministers. They do explain their point of view, but they spend more time explaining the other person's point of view and saying how it's wrong, which is very typical, by the way. So one minister says this, for us, God is not an abstraction. He definitely studied unity. He knew what to say. He is not just an idea, a metaphysical principle, an impersonal force or power. He is not identical with the totality of the world, with the sum of all reality. He is not an absolute that in some way embraces the whole of reality in his being. Now you got to admit that that's a pretty good definition of what Charles Fillmore was saying. But like us, this is what he says God is. Like us, God exists in a world of space and time. Like us, he has ends to be achieved, and he has fashioned a cosmic plan for realizing them. He is a concrete, living person. Another minister said this, definitely a new thought minister. We cannot get a right understanding of the relationship that the manifest bears to the unmanifest until we set clearly before ourselves the character of original being. So long as we think of God in terms of personality, we fail to understand the relationship existing between man and God. Let us dismiss the thought of God as a man or even an exalted man above human characteristics. So long as the concept of a man-God exists in consciousness, we will be unable to comprehend the truth, which is that God is first cause, the principle from which flows all manifestations. And a third minister speaks out. That's me. And says, I can't give you the answer. For me, the answer has become irrelevant. You must answer this question for yourself, for it is personal, and nothing short of a personal answer will suffice. But we can discuss your options. I gave a sermon not too long ago. You'll recall the one about the lady who said to say, I love myself. And then watch what happens. This kind of prayer for the lady who wrote the book I based that sermon on, this was a prayer for her to say these words. These 3 words became a healing prayer for her. In the end, she became so healed that she was enlightened. In the end, she became so healed that she was enlightened. There is magic in the act of self-love. For her, this was the only kind of prayer needed to open up her mind to the infinite. No God, no devotion or worship, nothing more than continuous stream of love, which, little at a time, healed her of all her fear. And I think, Teddy, you hit on that right between the eyes when the lady said, it's okay this person lives next to me because I've forgiven him. See, you can't, and I'm going to give a talk on this, it says in the Bible, where there is love, there can't be fear. Fear cannot exist in the same place that love exists. They don't go together. Where there's love, there's no fear. I think it's in 1 John. And so the lady forgave. She let go of all the negativity. And then she was able to live in peace. So from her perspective, the lady just says, I love myself. And that was the only thing she did. From her perspective, enlightenment is available to all. No mystical experience needed, just love. Self-love. Let us enlarge this feeling to include all of creation. Love for life. As Mary said in the dialogue, if you are the energy I feel, if you are life, and that is a very big something reaching into every corner of existence, then how can you be talking to me? Well, does the sunset talk to you? Does it love you? Do you love it? Do you love the darkest and coldest part of the night? Do you love the pains of life as well as the joys? Prayer holds the answer, but not the kind of prayer you may expect. The ultimate challenge to the illusion this world offers is love. So love yourself. When you begin to blossom and grow and dance down the street because you are happy, and you know that the illusion is your creation, here for your education, and you can alter it any time you want simply by the act of self-love, then you are free. Stop at the very moment that pleasure leaves you and say, what have I forgotten? And if you are centered in truth, you will answer, I am the Christ. Then you will take that remembering back into your human experience, and you will dance again. And we in the Spirit will dance with you. Then the task of God's plan of salvation will go quickly, for God is love, and pleasure is love, and joy is love, and truth is love, and all things are light. Now here's another dialogue. This is a conversation between Debbie, who is a teacher of the way, and a new student. She says, tell me about your first experience of awakening. And he says, well, if I'm here, it's precisely because I haven't had an experience of awakening. That's what your job is, isn't it, teacher? And he says, well, if you haven't had an experience of awakening, I can't do anything for you. She kind of shut up and went silent and let his confusion set in. He's thinking, what kind of teacher is this? She was an unusual teacher. Without prior experience of awakening, she continues. Without prior experience of awakening, no practice or meditation bears fruit. Without an awakening experience, there is no source. And since the foundation of all my teachings is to return to the source, one wanders not knowing where to go. You could follow my teachings for 30 years, but without prior awakening experience, you arrive at nothing. Now Devi is talking to you, not just her new student. Look into yourself deeply. Think about your childhood, your adolescence. An awakening experience is there. No being exists on earth who hasn't had this fundamental experience. Devi stood up and put her hands on his head. He felt wonderful sort of light and warmth, and suddenly an image came to his mind. He told her, I was 11. I was on vacations in the mountains. I had met a young girl my age, and one evening we went out walking along the trail and went up above the village. We were holding hands, walking in silence. At one moment we stopped and looked at the sky. It's night, right? I envisioned this. The village is on the edge of the ocean, and they've gone up above in the cliff above the village, and now they're looking out at the ocean, and they see this beautiful clear sky and these luminous stars up there. And he says, the incredible luminous stars seemed closer. I had the impression that being totally dissolved, the impression of being totally dissolved into the sky. You ever felt that? It lasted a few seconds. Could that be called an awakening? Yes, Devi said. And here's her message in the next paragraph, in a nutshell. When no sensation of the ego remains, nor of duality, nor of the mental operation that makes us say how beautiful it is, or how infinite, then there's nothing to limit an experience. Then it's an awakening. From then on, you are no longer in search for an abstract or remote state. You're searching for nothing that is not already within you. This capacity for total wonder is the very substance of awakening. It is out of this, and only this, that you become enlightened. I recommend Devi's book, at least the first part. And it's the book that was recommended to me by Nishta, actually. One of her favorite books. This feeling of wholeness, Devi described, is the answer to every prayer you've ever offered. These moments of wholeness are prayers in every sense of the word. The kind which help you remember who you are. That makes this kind of prayer Devi taught a form of self-love, for you cannot help but to love yourself when you remember who you are. Now here's a story. It had been another long week, and just I'm speaking as if I'm this person, and a long week of conducting training seminars, and I was tired, and I'm getting on the plane. I'm going to go home now. And as I boarded the plane, I noticed a young boy, about 8 years old, sitting in the window seat next to my seat. And they're going, oh, I love kids. However, I'm tired. I don't know about this, but trying the best to be friendly, I sit down and say hello and introduce myself. He told me his name was Bradley. That is such a good name for an 8-year-old. How come they get that name when they're 8 and later on, do they get a new name or something? Bradleys are definitely 8-year-olds. But I said hello. So his name was Bradley. We struck up a conversation. Within minutes, he took me into his confidence, and he said, this is my first time to fly, and to tell you the truth, I'm a little bit nervous. Flying is a piece of cake, I tried to assure him. One of the easiest things you'll ever do. I paused, thinking, now what can I do to help this kid? And I came up with a plan. Have you ever been on a roller coaster? I asked him. Oh, I love roller coasters. Do you ride them without hands? Oh yeah, I'd love to. It says he giggled, and I don't know if I can do that, so I'll just say he giggled. And he says, I love to. And I raised my hands above my head to prove that I'm not holding on to the rail. No, I responded as if I was horrified. Do you ever ride in the front? I asked with pretense of fear on my face. Oh yeah, I try to get in the front seat every time. And you're not afraid of that? He shook his head. No, clearly sensing he was now one up on me. Well, this flight will be nothing compared to that. I refuse to ride roller coasters, but I'm not the least bit afraid to fly. His smile edged on its way onto Bradley's face. Is that right? I could see that he was thinking that perhaps he was brave after all. The plane began to taxi down the runway. As we ascended, the boy looked over at me with a gleam in his eyes, and as he raised his hands above his head, as if he was not proving that he wasn't holding on to the railing as he was taking off in this plane. After we leveled out, he looked out the window and began looking at the clouds, and with great excitement described to me everything he saw, the cloud formations and the pictures that seemed to be painted there in the sky. This cloud looks like a butterfly, and look at that one. It looks like a horse. I smiled. And in the boy's joy, found beyond the shackles of fear, there was enlightenment. Brief, but it was there. Now let me repeat it. In the boy's joy, found beyond the shackles of fear, there was enlightenment. Brief, but it was there. So which is it? Is God an exalted being whom we can sit with and love just as we love one another in this world? Or is he, she, it, the essential nature of all creation, and thus unapproachable as an individual or as a friend? Well, Emily Cady wrote, every metaphysician either has reached or must in the future reach this place, the place where God as cold principle alone will not suffice any more than in the past God as personality alone will wholly satisfy. And after all is said and done, know this: the infinite cannot be divided into parts. Division is a notion of the mind, which is like a knife, always chipping away at pure consciousness, trying to render it graspable and manageable. But that which is beyond form is ungraspable, and that which is beyond knowing is unmanageable. There is, however, this consolation: he who lets go of the knife will find the infinite at his fingertips. Whether you are hearing a voice or hearing the oneness of creation through the sunset or through the love you feel for your fellow humans or for yourself, it is all the Christ, as Unity puts it. Like flying in an airplane, waking up the Christ consciousness is the easiest thing to do. You can hardly help but to wake this up, because on a very deep level, this is who you are. This is the message I leave with you today. When you know who you are, you will know the Christ, and you will love the Christ. I see the Christ in you, and I love you. I hear my inner voice through you just as easily as I hear it in my own head. There is an inner journey which you will all traverse until you see God for what he really is, a reflection of your soul upon the solar maps of eternity. And then as you stand face to face with this great and terrible God, you will say, I see the Christ in you. Oh. He will nod and smile, then reply, I see the Christ in you. Now I have a song for you. And then there'll be silence.